So today I wanted to talk to you about reflecting on your time and how you're spending your time. Because your time is your most valuable resource, but I think as a PhD, it's like particularly easy to waste it. So yeah, I wanted to share how I got around this and like where it exactly came from and like the whole spiel. I think working at a uni is super exciting because there is a lot of opportunities, you can join a lot of things, you can do a lot of things. I'm very, very excitable and also very impressionable. So that means that I say yes to a lot of stuff because, you know, I hear something cool, someone is like, oh, do you want to join? And I'm gonna be like, yes, to everything. And that led to me feeling super busy during my first year. And I touched on this on the previous 1 year of PhD video that I made. So if you have not seen that, check it out somewhere there. But I figured this deserves its own video because it was quite the journey. I felt super busy in the first year, and I also felt like I made much less progress on my research than I wanted to, but I just like couldn't really figure out why, because there were all of these things that I was super like enjoying and that I felt like they were good responsibilities to do. They all like, there wasn't like one big thing that was eating up so much of my time. And then came our annual review. So every year in the summer, there is a talk with your supervisors, and like this goes for faculty too. So then they just talk to, you know, like the unit lead or the manager or whatever, where you kind of have to reflect on what you've done this year. And as a PhD, I had to kind of like reflect on what I was doing, you know, how was my research going, how were my like community stuff going, like all of these things. Taking that audit of what I was doing really was like a wake-up call for me. I realized that my attention was way too scattered and I was doing way too many things at the same time. It was almost like a silly experience because when I just wrote it down, I was like, yeah, duh, you cannot making real progress. Like, what do you mean? It was so much. But when you are in it, like when you are right in the middle of it, it's very, very hard to notice kind of like the big picture because you just go from one meeting to another, like one email to the next, and then you organize this and then organize that, and then it just adds up. And then while you're in the thick of it, you just have this like almost like myopic view, like what's going on in your life. And then having that like step back of like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. It was a huge wake-up call for me. So yeah, after that annual review wake-up call, and you know, the summer spent working, I took a drastic measure to make sure that I spend my time in the right place. I started the newsletter. Yeah, you heard it right. I started a newsletter to myself and to my supervisors. And what this newsletter is for is it's called Gergő's Bulletin now, aptly named by one of my supervisors. And then it's basically a weekly update that I send out every Friday to them about what I did this week. And it's a bit of like a mini review almost of where my time went. And it's great, they love it, because they get like a record of where my time goes, it's transparent, they can keep track of the progress, it just makes the whole thing very easy. It's also searchable for them and for me, so it's like next annual review, I'm just gonna have to read a few of these, and then I'm gonna have like, oh, this is all the stuff I did. And then for me, it's great, because I actually get to audit my time. So I blocked out Friday 4:30 to 5, kind of like the end of the workday, to just sit down and write this for my supervisors. And then I just look over my to-do list, like what are the stuff that I did this week. I look at my calendar, which meetings I took, and kind of like compile all of that into this one short, I don't know, it's like 200 words or maybe like like this week it was 400, I rambled a bit, but they don't mind. So it's a great exercise to like kind of end the week on, and like for two reasons. And one of them is the one I already talked about, which is kind of getting a view of where you spend your time, and so you can adjust and like course correct on a bit of a shorter time horizon. It's not like, oh shit, annual review time, I wasted a year, but like over the weeks it's much easier to kind of stay on course. But what I found, which was a bit of an unexpected benefit of it, which might also come in very handy for PhDs, is that it enabled me to have a much more positive self-talk. Because I think imposter syndrome is almost synonymous with being a PhD, because you are in this very ambitious environment, very, very smart people around you, very driven people. So a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome, at least everyone I talk to so far. Doing this exercise of sitting down every Friday afternoon and kind of taking account of all the stuff I did kind of gives me a sort of fulfillment You know, like taking, like, it's really like puts it in front of you, like, oh yeah, this week was a good week's of work summarized in front of you. And I found that it kind of helps me or enables me to appreciate my accomplishments a little more. And that's just like, I think that goes a really, really long way, because, you know, it's one of my talking points is that that a PhD, and like most difficult things, but a PhD especially, is mostly about managing your psychology, or like that causes much more problems than, you know, actual like material research issues. And this helps me manage my psychology much, much better. It literally just puts my week's worth of work in front of me. And then if it's a good week, I can get this warm, fuzzy, accomplished feeling, which is super nice. And if it's not so good of a week, I know that, oh yeah, I caught it in time. As I said, time is your most valuable resource, and this exercise can enable you to actually spend it where it matters. And I'm not saying that you have to like cut out everything, although I did have to reject a few things that I really wanted to do, but I just like could not feasibly do it with time, which is very unlike me. So that's how you can see that the exercise is working. I find it very, very useful to reflect on these different time scales. Like the standard kind of like the standard cycles where you can do stuff is either daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly maybe, or yearly level. Why I found this week and year, so the weekly is my own little Gergős bulletin to my supervisors, and the yearly is the annual review. And why I found these to be the good balance for me is because days are just too short and too chaotic to really learn from. Because I have some days where it's full of meetings, but a day full of meetings doesn't mean that, oh my god, I need to cut back on responsibilities because I'm wasting so much time in meetings. No, it's just one of those days. And also, like, a very, very good research progress day does not mean that your entire research is now saved. So I find that a day is just too short and too chaotic to be a good measure, but a month is a bit too long to actually reflect on. I wanted to have a framework which does not have a lot of friction associated with it. Because if I would need to scroll through like a month worth of my calendar and a month worth of my to-do list to actually reflect on where this month went, I know that for me that would be way too much friction, and I would just actually not do it because it's too much information to process. And I also think that a month might be a touch too long to waste. And what I mean by that is, you know, if I sit down and audit a week and I find that the week was like zero research progress, I know that, okay, next week I can kind of make up for it. But if I find at the end of a month that this whole month I made no progress because blah, 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 it's a little bit too long of a time for my liking to kind of veer off course. So if I go like off course for a week, that's fine because I can course correct. We're pretty close to the center still. But if I go off for a month, I'm not super happy about that. This is kind of how I came to this week and year, as you know, the year is the real big picture, and then the week is the really micro level of reflection. And I highly recommend trying this out. And now I'm actually workshopping of like how I could do this for my personal life, because it was such a fun exercise, and I genuinely have a good time writing it, which I did not think I would do. So I highly recommend trying this out because it really helped me kind of take a better account of my time. As I mentioned, I have a few more of these PhD takeaways from my last year. So if you're interested, go check that out. Bye.